Story time about how my best friend was obsessed with me. And I'm not saying obsessed as in, oh my god, like, she does her hair like me. No, I'm saying in a creepy way. So a little background information, I was 14 and it was the summer before I was going into high school. And I had this best friend who we're gonna call Madison. Now, I met Madison like a month before school ended. She was one of those kids that nobody really liked and nobody wanted to be near. But we were partnered up in this one class and she's actually really funny. So since summer just started, I invited her over to have a sleepover at my house. Everything went well, we were swimming, we watched movies, but my house was in a really wooded area, so if you had certain phone carriers, you wouldn't get any reception. So she asked if she could use my iPad to text her dad, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, so I let her use it, and then we went to sleep. Well, I woke up around 3 in the morning because my phone kept going off, like for part 2.
Part 3 about how my boyfriend proposed to another girl right in front of me. I know this is late, but better late than never. So like I said, we left, I went back to her house, and my boyfriend has the audacity to text me, I'll just meet you guys at the airport. So my best friend's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go beat him up? Of course I said no, so I told her and her boyfriend to just go to the airport while I figured out what I was going to do, and to not say a word. Which was hard for my best friend because she was confrontational as fuck. So I texted my boyfriend saying that I was sick and I just wasn't going to go to the Bahamas with them, when in reality I was packing up our whole house, leaving him with only his clothes and his shoes. So I put all the stuff in storage and I just decided to move back to my mom's house. And yes, this was in a span of a few days. So the whole time that he was gone, I was acting like everything was okay. On the last day of the trip, I sent him a text saying that I knew about everything. And I said I never wanted to hear from him again and I never wanted him to see the kids again. And he took that quite literally. I never got a text back. Well, 4 months after all this happened, I soon find out that he got a new house in North Carolina with his new wife and they have a daughter on the way.
Story time about how my aunt drugged me. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 10th grade. And I had never met my aunt before, but whenever my parents talked about her, it was only bad things. Well, the one day I went to go and ask my mom something and I heard her on the phone with someone. She was like, no, I'm not giving you any more money. It's not my fault if you spent it all on drugs. And we barely talked about my aunt, so I didn't know that's who she was talking to. Fast forward, I come home from school the one day and my dad's sitting on the porch with this woman who looks like she's homeless. My dad introduces her. He's like, oh, by the way, this is your aunt. He was like, oh, well, she wants to spend some time with you, so you're going to go with her for a few hours. I was hesitant because of all of the stuff that my mom had told me about her, but I started walking down to her car and my mom whips in the driveway. Eventually, my aunt ends up talking my mom into letting me see her, and apparently my aunt has been asking to see me for a very long time. So she takes me to the mall, we eat, we get our nails done, and at this point, I'm thinking she's kind of normal until she takes me to her house. Like for part 2. Part 3 about how my stepdad made my mom choose between him or my brothers. So like I said he needed to teach some discipline, so he literally beat the shit out of Alex. And we all didn't know until he came downstairs the one morning for breakfast. And that's whenever Josh flipped the hell out. He threatened Jerry with a knife. After that, my mom called the cops. I didn't really do anything but try to de-escalate the situation. But after that, Jerry called a family meeting down to the kitchen table. And he was like, I will not deal with this level of disrespect in this house. He was like, you need to choose between me or them. She was like, well, I'm not going to choose between you or my kids. And he was like, well, then you need to choose them leaving the house. They're about to be 18. They can leave and get their own place. So my mom ended up choosing Jerry because Jerry had a lot of money. And my brothers weren't really that mad about it because it got them out of the house. And my mom would send them a lot of money every month. And Jerry never knew about it. But now instead of him being abusive towards my brothers, he's way more abusive towards my mom. Story time. Everybody's saying that I cheated on my ex-boyfriend, but I want your guys' opinion. So a little background information. I was a college student, and I had been with this guy who we're going to call Jacob for about 6 months. Towards the end of his and I's relationship, stuff just started to get really boring, and every day I would get the ick from him. Now, at this time also, I had gotten a new job. While I was working, I had met this guy who we're going to call Tim. Since I was a college student, I decided to start working more, so Tim and I would see each other literally every day. Him and I really hit it off, like straight away. Not to mention, him and I had a lot of things in common, his sense of humor was great. Well, the one night before work got out, Tim asked for my number, and I said yes. However, since I was still with Jacob, I decided that I was going to break up with him before I texted Tim. So I broke up with him. Fast forward to now, Tim and I are in a super good relationship, but now everyone's saying that I cheated on Jacob. What do you guys think? Story time about how my aunt kidnapped my dog. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. I had a 4-month-old puppy that I would take care of because since I wanted the dog, my parents were like, you have to take care of him, blah, 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 blah. So put him in the crate, went to school, came home, thought everything was good until my dog is missing. So now I'm like, what the fuck? Because it's literally a 4-month-old puppy. Anyways, I searched around the house to see if he maybe escaped or he was hiding under the beds or something, but he was nowhere to be found. So I asked the neighbors to keep a lookout for him and even put up missing posters everywhere. And when my parents got home, I told them the situation and they were like, oh, honey, he probably ran away, but he'll probably be back tonight. Yeah, fast forward 5 hours, he still wasn't home. So my dad was like, go to sleep. He'll be back in the morning. So I went to sleep, or I tried, but then I couldn't sleep, so I got up and got some melatonin. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I became a stepmom at 22 and my stepkids hate me. So like I said, we're all sitting down in the dining room and there's 4 kids. There's 1 boy, 3 girls. The 1 boy is 14 and all the other girls are 15, 16, and 19. And we're going to call my boyfriend James. James is like, okay, well, I'm going to go back to the kitchen and finish cooking. You guys should bond a little bit. So he leaves me alone with these little fucking roaches and they just start firing shots at me. They're like, you're a gold digger, aren't you? Don't worry, my dad will never marry you, so you're not going to get any of his money. So after that, I told James that they need to warm up to me a little bit more before I move in. So for the next month, we would try to plan things with the kids. But anytime that I was going to be there, every single one of them would be like, we're not going, we hate her. Eventually, James just kind of said, fuck it, and he asked me to marry him. So I moved in, and then a week later, we got married. His kids didn't show up to the wedding, and James had to go on a work trip. So I was moving some of my stuff into the house from the car, and the kids fucking locked me out of the house. This has all been within the span of 5 months. What should I do? Part 2 about my aunt who drugged me. So like I said, she ended up talking my mom into letting me go with her, which I was super grossed out because she smelled really bad and her car was a mess, but she took me to the mall. I thought she was normal. And then she took me to her house. When we got into the neighborhood, I kind of recognized it because my grandma lived in the same neighborhood. But anyways, we pull up and it is literally trashed. Like there's fucking garbage all outside of the house. And I walked inside thinking that it would be better. No, it was filthy. There were needles everywhere. You could definitely tell that druggies lived there. And they had weird pictures hanging up all over the walls of these girls, random girls. Like when I asked who they were like, oh, I don't know. So then her boyfriend's walking around the house. He's like 40 years old, walking around in his boxers around me. So I call my mom, I go outside and I'm waiting for her. And my aunt comes out and she's like, do you want a glass of water? She gave me some water and it tasted really sour and I had chugged the whole thing. And that was the last thing I remember before I woke up on her couch in the morning. Like for part 3. Here we go with another toxic best friend story time. So a little background information. So a couple of years ago, I became best friends with this one girl who we're going to call Sammy. Every year her family would go on a camping trip and every year I couldn't go. Something would always come up even if it was last minute. Well, this year, finally, nothing was standing in the way so I could go on this freaking camping trip. And we had literally been planning this for like 6 months. So this plan was we would go up there in the afternoon after I was done with work and after she was done with school. Well, then she calls me and she asks me if I can call off work and go up a day early with her. And I told her, no, I can't do that. I already took off a bunch of time because I was sick and for my sister's wedding. So I need the money. So after I tell her I can't go up on Thursday, I would rather go on Friday like we said, she responds with, well, we're going on Thursday and either you can take the day off and join or not. And then I told her, I'm not driving when the whole plan was for you to drive. Like for part 3 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, on the 3rd night, she was sleeping, so we went on her phone. I deleted all of the blackmail that she had on me, and I even went a step further and screenshotted all of the nudes that she was sending back and forth with older guys. And these guys were way older than her, like way older. And I sent them to myself and deleted the text off of her phone. Fast forward, we drop her off at her house. I stay over my friend's house and we decide that we're going to post everything to my exposing page. And we also came up with a really good idea. Why not send this to Tessa's parents? So we sent them to her parents. And guys, when I tell you this exposing page had so many people on it, it really did. Somebody was like, OMG, like, please send a face reveal, like, I won't tell anybody. So what did I do? I sent a picture of Tessa, and that person posted it to their Snapchat story. Fast forward to the first day of school. We're outside for gym class, and 3 girls beat her ass. Story time about how I got my ex-toxic best friend jumped. So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And like any of these toxic best friend story times, she was super jealous of me for literally no reason. She would literally try to be better than me in everything. Like when I did a sport or a club, she would join immediately right after. And it wasn't oh, I'm gonna join my best friend. No, it was, I'm gonna join so that way I can show her that I'm better than her. For example, in 6th grade, I was captain on the volleyball team, and she decided that she was gonna try out her sophomore year. She played it off as if she just wanted to try it out, but then I got announced captain, and she was pissed off when she heard that. She literally blocked me on everything, and she came from a super wealthy family, so she was used to getting whatever she wanted. And my whole friend group would literally tell me, you need to stop being friends with her, she's toxic, she's this, she's that. The only thing that stopped me from being friends with her was the blackmail, like for part 2 about why I might not be allowed to go to an Olivia Rodrigo concert. So like I said, pretty much somebody was like, hey, I want my money back, and the tickets were no longer there. Mind you, I was already charged in December, and now it's April. So I call my bank, and I'm like, hey, like, what the fuck is going on? My money is missing. These people say they don't have it, aka Ticketmaster. And they're like, oh my god, like, we're so sorry. We thought that it was like a fraudulent charge, so we just disputed it. So now, of course, I'm extremely pissed off and upset. So then when they realized they fucked up, they were like, okay, we'll give the money back to them. That's completely fine. And then I called Ticketmaster and I talked to somebody. They said, that's fine. Just let them know at the door that there was a mix-up. And I'm like, okay, but they're not just going to believe me. So can you send me an email saying that's what happened? And right after that, they hung up the call, and I've been trying to get a hold of Ticketmaster ever since, and they haven't been answering. So go check your tickets, and please tag Ticketmaster. Part 2 about how my stepdad made my mom choose between him or my brothers. So like I said, my mom and Jerry got into this one fight, and it's a super long story, but pretty much all it made Jerry realize was that he did not have authority over my mother, and she didn't have to depend on him for anything because my brothers would always be there for her. Now, Alex was more of the shy one. Meanwhile, Josh was super hot-headed and didn't deal with anybody's bullshit. And fast forward, my mom and Jerry move in together. That's when we realized that Jerry was super abusive. And Jerry knew that he could pick on Alex whenever he wanted because he wasn't going to do shit. And most of the time, Josh wasn't home because he literally hated Jerry. The one time Alex came home and he did really bad on this one test. And Jerry was like, oh, he needs to learn discipline, blah, blah, blah. The next day, we all were sitting down for breakfast and we saw Alex come downstairs with a black eye. And that's whenever Josh flipped the fuck out. He grabbed Jerry, ripped him across the fucking table, and threatened him with a kitchen knife. And my mom called the cops, like for part 3.
Part 2 about how my boyfriend literally proposed to another girl right in front of me. So like I said, my boyfriend had a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of town. And that night we were supposed to be on a plane to the Bahamas with our friends. So while he was getting ready for this meeting, I went and I dropped the kids off early. And he went to this meeting and I drove our luggage over to our friend's house. Because they were just going to drive us to the airport. So my girlfriend and I are super pumped to go on this trip. So we decided to start drinking early and we went somewhere to get drinks. She suggests this high-end place because the guy at the bar has a crush on her and always gives her free drinks. So we're sitting there having a really good time drinking at the bar. So while we're sitting there, we hear a bunch of clapping and cheering coming from outside. So us being drunk and nosy, we go out there to see what's going on. And what are the chances I walk out there and my boyfriend is down on one knee in front of another girl? And I'm not very confrontational whenever I drink, so I told my best friend to just take me back to her house. When we got back, it was around 6 p.m. And my boyfriend tells me that he's just going to meet us at the airport like for part 3.
Storytime about how my stepdad made my mom choose between him and my brothers. So a little background information, I was 13 years old and in 7th grade. And I had 2 older brothers, Josh and Alex, who were twins, and they were both 4 years older than me. Whenever I was 3, my dad left my mom for his dentist. And we never saw him again because he decided to start a whole new family with them. Now, because of that, my older brothers always felt like they had a specific role in my family, especially because the guys that my mom brought home, they would only last a week. Well, finally, my mom met this guy who's really nice, and she decided that she was going to get married to him, but he despised my older brothers. Mainly because before he moved in with us, my mom would not depend on him for anything. Anything that needed taken care of around the house, my brothers would do it. And we didn't have too much money while this guy was loaded. Like the one time my mom and this guy, who we're going to call Jerry, got into a fight, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, the only thing that was stopping me from not being her friend was the blackmail that she had. Every time that I pissed her off, or even just randomly, she would be like, oh, I'm gonna send this out. I'm gonna expose you. She was just overall a shitty friend. So I had an exposing account on Instagram where I would expose people in my class. It got banned, but she DM'd the account the blackmail. Little did she know it was literally me who was running it. Obviously, I didn't post it, but I showed one of my friends, and we kind of made a plan to get rid of the blackmail. So my birthday was coming up, and I was going to Disney, and my mom said that I could invite 2 friends. Originally, I wasn't going to invite Tessa, but since I had this plan, I invited her and one of my other friends. On the 3rd night, my friend and I decided to take our plan into action. Tessa was sleeping, so I went on her phone, and I went and deleted all the pictures. Life for part 3. Part 2 about how my best friend was obsessed with me in a creepy way. So like I said, I woke up at 3 in the morning because my phone kept going off, and it wasn't dinging or anything. It was just the light flashing when it would go off and on. So I look around for Madison, and then I see my bathroom light is on, but the door is shut. So I just brush it off, and I go on my phone, and I see a bunch of text messages that were sent from me, but they weren't sent from me. Like, obviously, somebody had went on my iPad and started sending people messages. So I look at these messages, and it's all texting Madison. And I kid you not, it's literally pictures of me while I'm sleeping that she sent to herself. Like, there was a picture of my hair, a picture of one of my birthmarks. And then on her side of the nightstand, there was literally a lock of my hair. Like, she cut my hair off. And it was in a Ziploc bag. So at this point, I'm actually really creeped out, and I go and tell my mom. And my mom talked to her mom, and apparently she's done this before. Part 2 about my extremely toxic best friend. So like I said, she tried to talk me into taking off work so that way we could go up on Thursday, but I told her no, I would rather stick with the plan and go up Friday. And then she says, well, you can do that, but we're all going up on Thursday, so you're gonna have to find your own ride. And then I told her, I'm not driving up there. I don't know this place. So at that point, I was like, fuck it. If they leave without me, they live without me. I do not care at this point. And I pretty much said that. If you want to go without me, then go without me. And she called me and she was like, you're being extremely rude. A little background information on Sammy. She was a super selfish, self-centered person. And she has like only child syndrome. Every time we hung out, we had to do what she wanted to do. I was super annoyed about this because I had already planned for this vacation. Meaning I took the time off work, I rearranged my whole schedule, and now I don't really know if I want to be friends with her. What do you guys think? Part 2 about how my aunt kidnapped my dog. So like I said, my dad was like, go to sleep, and I went to try to go to sleep, but I couldn't because my dog was freaking missing, so I go downstairs to get some melatonin when I hear my dad talking shit on the phone to my aunt. He was talking about something with the dog, but my dumbass starts walking across the floor, and all of a sudden the floor creaks, so I run upstairs, get back into bed, and go to sleep. So the next day after school, I tell my dad I'm going to go to my aunt's house because she didn't live too far away, and I thought, okay, well, maybe she's seen him run around her neighborhood, whatever. And he was like super off about it at first, but he was like, fine, whatever, go to your aunt's house. So I get to her house, and I walk in, and I hear dogs barking. One dog, because she didn't have any fucking dogs. And I walk over to the backyard, and what do you know? My puppy is sitting in her fucking backyard. So I brought my dog home and told my dad. And he got really mad. It turns out he didn't even want the dog in the first place, so he gave her to my aunt. He apologized and we're good now, but Story time about how my bank might have ruined my chances of going to an Olivia Rodrigo concert. So a little background information. In December, I got tickets to Olivia's concert. I thought it would be the perfect Christmas gift for my sister and I to go to California and go to her concert. And I got 2 floor seats. So I was super excited when I gave her the tickets. We were both like screaming, that we were going to be going to a concert. We had the best seats. Well, knowing that I had the tickets, I hadn't checked on them for a few months. And this concert is on May 20th of 2022. Well, a few days ago, I was going on Ticketmaster to check the tickets, and it said that they had been voided, and I had no idea why, so I was frantically trying to figure out what the hell had happened to my tickets. And I didn't want my sister thinking, oh my god, like she really didn't get the tickets. So I was sending emails with Ticketmaster, and they said that somebody had filed a dispute. If you don't know what that means somebody was like, hey, that's my money, I'm taking it back. Like for part 2. Story time. I became a stepmom at 22 and my stepkids hate me. So a little background information. I was 22 and working at Hooters, and I had this one regular who literally came in every single day that I worked. I mean, it wasn't really creepy because I did give him my schedule because he tipped really well, but that's besides the point. The one night he asked me out, and obviously I knew that he was going to pay for our dinner, so I said yes because I was hungry and I did not want to pay for food. So anyways, I go on this date and I actually end up really liking him just to find out that he is 40 years old. Fast forward a few months, we start dating, and he realizes that I still live at home with my mom and dad. So he's like, oh, like, you can move in with me, but first you need to meet my kids. And I, thought that his kids were going to be, 2 and 3 years old. No, when I went over to dinner the one night at their house, there were 4 kids who were literally all above the age 13. And every single one of the girls gave me a death stare as I sat down in my chair, for part 2.
Story time about how I saw my boyfriend propose to another girl in front of me. So a little background information. At the time, my boyfriend and I had been together for around 4 years. We had 2 kids together, and our relationship was pretty rocky. Within the first year of us dating, he would cheat on me all the time, and both times that I was pregnant, he would cheat on me also. Now, after I popped out the second kid, our relationship was going pretty well. And if you're wondering why I didn't leave him when he was cheating on me all the time, well, it was mainly because I grew up in a broken home. And remembering how hard it was on me whenever my parents broke up, I didn't want that for them. Well, over the past few months, my boyfriend had been traveling all over the country with his dad, going to meetings and stuff because he was getting ready to take over half the company. Well, fast forward, it's a Thursday, and my boyfriend has a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of state, and later that night we were supposed to get on a flight with our friends to go to the Bahamas. For part 2.